Welcome to FBN Live. I'm Tracy Burns. Your Dow still up 48 points. As I mentioned before break, we got National Home Builders Association thinking that things are looking up. I guess when they're so bloody pathetic, it can only look up. So maybe that's what we're going with that. But either way, home builder stocks are up today. That's kind of what's holding the Dow. Nasdaq's basically flat, even though Apple's crossing 300 like a locomotive. And Citigroup came out and said it's had profit. It was reserving less money for loan losses. I guess that's a good thing. Keep in mind, Citi is still partially owned by the government. So take that with a grain of salt. We're going to go out to Seattle right now. Kathleen Brush is with us. Now, if you can't find investments here in the United States because everyone is so confused, maybe looking overseas is the right answer, Kathleen. Kathleen Brush, global leadership consultant with us. Latin America, huh? That might be the new China?
Well, I actually think that with the administration's goal of 50% growth in exports in the next 5 years, that we have got to stop looking at China. We have got to stop paying so much attention to whether China is going to be revaluing the yuan. It's like if they revalue the yuan, are Americans going to go, are Chinese going to go flocking to buy American goods? The answer is probably not. I mean, right now, the two countries that China buys the most amount of imports from are Japan and Korea. And it's not because the goods are cheap. They buy them from Japan and Korea because they're countries that are similar. They know what types of products the Chinese might want. And in addition to that, it's proximity of location.
Yeah.
It's much simpler.
Let's talk about well, let's talk about China in general, right? China, I mean, I for one don't trust China as far as I could throw it because they don't have audited financial statements. They don't even have an FDA, for God's sake, right? So we don't even know what's coming out of China. This notion that the president wants to improve exports, I mean, do you actually see us getting there? Our trade deficit's getting worse and worse by the moment.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. And that's one of the reasons why I think we should be looking at Latin America. I mean, trade with Latin America has been increasing at the most rapid rates of any region in the world. I mean, it's increased over 3.5% in the last several years. And we actually have a trade surplus with Brazil, with Argentina, with Peru, and with Chile. I mean, look at Mexico. Mexico is our second largest market for exports. We export twice the amount of goods to Mexico as we export to China.
So what happens then? We start to see more relations with them? Is this, I mean, really, this comes down to corporations, right? Saying, we got to open our doors to Latin America. Because everybody talks about China and how you have to have relations with them.
Well, you have to have good relations with no matter who you're going to be doing good business with. But the fact is yes, businesses need to be looking at Latin America, but also the government needs to be looking at Latin America. I mean, we've neglected Latin America. We've interfered with Latin America. I mean, right now we don't have the greatest relationships with all the countries down there that we need to have good relationships with. And so, the government does have a role to play. But yes, in addition to that, yes, businesses need to start looking south. There are a number of opportunities down south.
Is there, I mean, part of it too is there a fear of unrest in some of these nations, some of these countries down there? They're a little bit more, a lot more fighting, a lot more primitive, I suppose, than you could say, even though, again, I don't think China's all that advanced, but I could be wrong. Is that part of the fear factor?
Well, Tracy, first of all, the purchasing power parity, right, the GDP per capita, the equivalent ratio there, it's higher in a lot of countries in Latin America. When you look at the purchasing power parity in China, it's half what it is in Brazil and Chile. And in general, the countries that are attractive in Latin America, they have higher purchasing power parities than in China. But then, and I think that one of the things that we have to do in the United States is we have to stop looking at the past. There have been a lot of problems in Latin America. They've had problems with government, right? Well, all governments in Latin America today are democratically elected with the exception of Cuba. And then inflation's been a problem in the past, right? Well, they've got that largely tamed. Argentina and Venezuela still have problems there, but I mean, right now, the inflation in, say, Chile, Colombia, Peru, it's less than China.
And yet ours is on the rise, so go figure. So the government then should be looking to, because we all know that we are probably going to see a point in time where China's going to stop buying our debt, or at least pull back a little bit. They're certainly going to get cautious. So
Right.
it could be
No,
in the government's best interest to get a move on and go look somewhere else before we don't have buyers at all.
Well, you know, that's a very good point, Tracy, but I think it goes even beyond that. I mean, right now, if you look at the fact that 10 years ago, 66% of global GDP came from developed countries. Today, it's 50%. In another 10 years, it's going to be 40%. You know, we've got some serious changes going on in the economic spheres of influence, right? So we have got to, the United States has got to tap into these emerging markets where all this growth is coming from, right? So China, well, I don't know. China right now, they seem to have an affinity for Japan, Korea, for other countries that are local to them, that have cultural similarities, right? Well, then we could look at maybe the emerging markets in Central Europe. Well, they're pretty closely tied to the European Union, and there's a lot of good reasons for that. So what's left for us, right? Well, we've got Africa and we've got Latin America. Well, Latin America is right in our backyard. Mm-hmm. And I think that, you know, it would be good for the United States on a number of levels to look south.
It's interesting that you say that, though, because a lot of Chinese imports, exports come from Europe. Why? Because of proximity. And along those same lines, we should be using Latin America because we share borders with these people.
We absolutely do. We share a common border right now, right with Mexico. Mm-hmm. And then when you look at, I mean, China's 6,000 miles away from San Francisco.
Yeah, you know what, Kathleen, you make a great point with this, and I'm so glad we had this conversation because I do think it's one we should continue to have. So let's keep talking about it. Kathleen Brush, Global Leadership Consultant out in Seattle. Thanks for getting up early and joining us.
Oh, my pleasure, Tracy.